Hello. Hello. So today we'll be talking about indifference curve analysis. Okay. So remember when we are talking about consumer satisfaction, there's two theory that explains consumer satisfaction. First is the marginal utility theory, and the second is the indifference curve analysis. So today we're going to talk about indifference curve analysis. Before we start talking about indifference curve analysis, there's two things that you need to know. First one is the budget line. Okay, budget line. And the second one is the indifference curve. So we'll start with the budget line. What is the budget line? Budget line actually represents the real income that a consumer has. Okay, like the word budget, you cannot spend more than your budget, right? So the budget line actually constrains the consumer's consumption. So a budget line actually shows the combination of two goods a consumer can buy at the given income. Okay. To be more exact, the budget line shows all combination of two goods a consumer can buy at the given income. So an example, let's say the consumer's income is 100 ringgit and the price of X is 2 ringgit and the price of Y is 1 ringgit. So now if consumer uses all his income to buy good X, how much X can he buy? 50, right? Okay, so now if consumer uses all his income to buy good Y, how much Y can he buy? 100 divided 1, which is 100, right? So with the given income of 100 ringgit, the consumer can actually buy products on this line. Buy the combination of products on the budget line, the green line over here. Okay, so at every single point in the line, no matter where it is, whether is it here, or here, the consumer can consume using the 100 ringgit he has. Okay, so this is the budget line. So now I want you to pause the video and think about these three scenarios. What happens to the budget line when, number one, the consumer's income reduce? Number two, the price of X increase. And number three, the price of Y increase and X decrease. Okay? Pause and think. Okay, got it? Now we proceed to the next one, the indifference curve. Indifference curve. So the indifference curve is actually a curve that shows the combination of goods that yield the same satisfaction to the consumer. Okay, the budget line it's not the same as the budget line because the budget line shows the combination of goods that the consumer can consume with the given budget, right? The indifference curve shows the satisfaction that the consumer can gain. Meaning, I will give you an example. Let's say we talk about this curve, curve 1. Okay, at curve 1, the consumer can consume, let's say, this much meat and this much veggie. Let's say it's 20 and 10. The consumer can also consume, let's say, 15 meat and 12 veggie. Okay, or the consumer also can consume 10 meat and 14 veggie. So all of this combination, 20 meat and 10 veggie, 15 meat and 12 veggie, or 10 meat and 14 veggie, lies on this curve. Okay, what this means is each of these pair of combination actually gives the consumer the same satisfaction. Okay, the same satisfaction. Understand? Okay, so one thing you need to know about the indifference curve is, first of all, you will notice that the indifference curve is actually bowed inwards. It bows inwards. Why? Because let's say, okay, I'll show you over here. Okay, let's say you start off with a lot of meat. compared to veggie. You have so much meat, you have 20 meat, but you only have 1 veggie. So what happens here is you will prefer veggie. Your preference here to give you more satisfaction, you will want more veggie than meat, right? Because you have so much meat, you don't need any more meat, but you only have 1 veggie. So let's say you want to increase your consumption of veggie to number 2, from 1 to 2. Okay, how much meat will you be willing to sacrifice? That's the problem. That's the question we want to answer. So if you can see here, you'll be willing to sacrifice so much meat to increase your consumption of veggie by 1. You sacrifice 10 meat for 1 veggie. Okay, why? Because you have so much meat and so less veggie that you prefer veggie to meat. Understand? Okay, now let's look at the other end. If you have, let's say, so much veggie, let's say 20, and just 1 meat. Okay, same thing. How much veggie will you be willing to sacrifice to increase your consumption of veggie from 1 to, let's say, 2? Just ignore the scale of the drawing. So if you look at the graph, the number of veggie you'll be willing to sacrifice is this much. You'll be willing to sacrifice so much veggie to increase the consumption of meat by so little. Understand? Okay. Now back to the indifference curve analysis. So just now we're talking about indifference curve. So there's 2 things that you need to know about the indifference curve in the indifference curve analysis. Number one, the indifference curve on the right yields higher satisfaction than the curve on the left. Meaning, the indifference curve on the right, meaning the right side, which is this side, okay, yields higher satisfaction than the one on this side. In other words, C1 has more satisfaction than C2, C2 than C3, C3 than C4, C4 than C5. Okay, in other words, at every single point of C1, the consumer gains more satisfaction than each and every point of C2. Understand? Okay. The second thing that you need to know about the indifference curve is that the consumer feels the same happiness on all points in the same curve, in the same individual, not demand, indifference curve. Meaning, like mentioned, at C1, at every single point of every single point, or at all the different combination of goods at C1, the consumer feels indifferent, meaning they feel the same satisfaction. Same goes to C2, C3, C4, and C5. So these are the 2 things that you need to know. So now we'll go into the indifference curve analysis. So essentially, the indifference curve analysis is just a combination of the budget line and the indifference curve. Okay? Now, if we combine the budget line and the indifference curve, we'll get a curve something like this. Okay? So, using your common sense or your logic, before you know any theory, where is the point where the consumer maximizes its satisfaction based on what we've learned before? Pause the video and think of it. And if you're done, just then resume the video. Okay? So it's quite obvious that the point where the consumer maximizes its satisfaction is at this point, right? Why? First of all, the first thing we know about budget curve is the consumer cannot consume outside the budget line. The consumer can only consume inside, meaning to the left of the budget line, right? And so this is the portion where the consumer can consume. Okay, so in this portion, the consumer yields the maximum satisfaction when it is consuming at the righter indifference curve, right? So the budget line it intersects the writer's indifference curve at this point. Understand? Meaning, with the available income that the consumer consumes, the consumer gains more satisfaction here. You can actually check this by considering all other points. Like if the consumer is consuming here, the consumer can actually maximizes its satisfaction by increasing its consumption, by reducing the consumption of X and increasing the consumption of Y, so that it goes here, which is on the next indifference curve, right? Okay. So to summarize, the consumer maximizes its satisfaction at the point where the budget line is tangent to the indifference curve. The budget line, this is the budget line, is tangent to the indifference curve. The word tangent means it intersects at only one point. Okay? So lastly, I'll show you how to derive the demand curve from the indifference curve analysis. Okay, now